A lady from our website. You can use this microphone, please.
I think Ernest, when he gets healthy, I think he hasn't been that healthy for a while. But when he's healthy, he's a very good player, and he can definitely be at the top of the game. Getting to number one is not an easy thing to do. I will need to see Ernest play a bit more than he has played the last few years to have a clear opinion on that. But he's an excellent player, and when he's healthy, I think he can be at the top of the game. He's very good.
Okay, thank you. So, if some of you is prepared or just a question pops up, please let me know. Let me ask you then another question, which is also on this Bleach report, and this is, just a second please. How did you find Grigor's weapons, and how did you make use of them for the vessel?
I think Grigor has had weapons his whole life. Just as a player, you need to make them clear for you and your team to work towards a goal with a clear plan. For me, it's quite simple. Grigor has three clear weapons, which are his serve, his forehand, and his movement. When they're at their best, they're, I think, the best in the game. So it was just about focusing on those three things at the beginning of our working relationship. And then once those weapons became clear to him, then we can start working around the weapons. But I would say those are his main three weapons, which is the serve, the forehand, and his movement.
So I would ask you about the Grigor's return, which is surprisingly good for the last couple of months.
His return game is very good because he's a very fast player. So I never understood why his return game was not as good as it can be. He's a player that is very reactive and very fast with his movement. So this is one of the most important things. Your return is to be able to move quickly to the ball.
What did you do? You did something with
to it? Return. We just work on it a lot. So I've been focusing on his return game quite a lot. He finds it difficult because we spend a lot of time working on it, but I think when you focus on a specific part of the game for a long period of time, then the results start coming. So we've been working on the return since August. So it's been already 5 months, so I think it's enough time for the return game to keep getting better. And it's not something that we're only working at the beginning, it's something that is very important for his game. Because of how good his serve is, then if he can also make the game difficult on return for the other player, I think that can be a big asset for him.
Okay. Would you mind now sharing something about you, your life? How do you feel in general? What do you do in your free time? Things like that.
Interesting fact is that I never expected to be a tennis coach. It was never in my thoughts when I was younger. I played my whole life, and then when I decided to stop playing, I got offered to start working with Andy Murray, but more as a friend because we had known each other for a long time. So it was never clear to me that I was going to end in this path. But at the beginning of my relationship with him, it went extremely well. So that made me think, look, maybe this is my thing. It's something that I'll be good at. So it was something that in life is interesting how from one day to the next, your ambitions and your view in life can change. Because like I said, it was never my plan to be a tennis coach, but life can change from one day to the next, and I had a very successful relationship with Andy, and then that made me realize, look, I'm good at this, I enjoy it very much, I'm very passionate about it, I actually love my job, which makes it a lot easier day to day when you enjoy what you're doing. So I think that's quite interesting that I never saw myself doing this, but now I'm extremely happy doing it. So it's interesting how in life it's important to have a positive outlook because everything can change from one day to the next.
Okay.
Hey, my name is Janet, and I'm very happy to see you and to welcome you here. My son here is a young tennis player, and because he's shy, he just want to ask you using me, which you talk already about the three weapons of Grigor. What will be the three advices that you may give to a young tennis player to follow and to remember? Thank you.
Most important is to play as much as you want to play. Some people would say you need to play from 5 to 8 3 times a week, from 8 to 12 5 times a week. Then after 12 you need to play 6 times a week. I think it's very important for the player when he's young to play as much as he wants. If he wants to play 6 times a week, great. If he wants to play just 1 time a week, that's fine. It's important for him to, when he's young, most important thing is to enjoy it. To go to the court and be happy to be there and not to feel that he's forced to go to the court because the coach says you have to play this amount of time. So for me, that's the most important, that he goes to play when he wants to play, especially at his age. Then when he starts getting older, I think it's important to have a structure from the coach, because then it starts getting more serious. After 12, 13, 14, then you need to take the sport very seriously. But at the beginning, it's important that he decides how much he wants to play. Then I would say to play other sports is very important as well, not just tennis. I recommend football. I think it's a very sport. If you want to be a tennis player, it helps you with your first step, your change of direction. It helps you with your speed a lot and with your balance. So I think it's a good sport to combine with tennis when you're young. And the other one, I would say it's important to play competition. To be a top tennis player, you need to be a very competitive person, and you can only get that if you have been competing from a young age. It's very difficult to be a competitive person in life if you only started competing when you're 15, 16, 17. I think you need to start competing when you're very young, even if it's once in a while. But it's important to play tournaments or events, even not only in tennis but in other sports. I think it's important to be involved in competition because this creates this competitive nature when you start getting older.
Hello, I'm your national television. I want to ask you, Grigor talks about your great relationship between you two. How important is the trust that you have?
Very important. I wouldn't be able to do my job otherwise. I think one of the reasons why I took the job with Grigor is because when we started having our first talk, I realized that first of all we were on the same page when we were talking about his game and how to move forward and methods of training. But then you need to have trust when you're communicating with someone else, and I could feel that from the beginning. But I also believe as a coach, you gain your trust by when you deliver a message, the message being strong enough as well. So that's why at the beginning of our relationship, you need to be very careful with how much information you give, because you want the information to be the right information. So at the beginning, you want to gain the trust from the player by not saying too many things and not making mistakes, because if the trust is not there from the beginning, then it's difficult in the future to deliver the bigger message. So at the beginning, it was very important for me to build that trust with him and give him enough confidence to then be open to the bigger message and the more important information. But I would say that we have a very good relationship on and off the court, so that helps me a lot.
Okay, another question from our website actually.
Hopefully not about boobies.
No, not boobies. This is how do you see the game develops in a few years from now? Is it going to be a defensive game from the baseline, or is it going to be a serve, net stuff, attacking play?
I think the game has gone through different stages in the last 20 years. It went from very fast to very good servers that did serve and volley in late 90s, early 2000s, but then usually the game adapts to what's happening. So late 90s, early 2000s, big servers coming to the net, so then players that couldn't do that said, okay, I need to return better. So then when players started returning better, then the big servers and the serve and volleyers didn't work anymore. Then when the good returners started doing well, then someone said, I need to do better from the baseline because my serve is not being strong enough. So now I think the last 10, 15 years, the baseline game has been excellent, and we can see that, especially number 1 and number 2 player in the world. They're great baseliners. So I think the next step for tennis is going to be players playing more aggressive because not everyone can play so good from the baseline. So now you need to find ways to have bigger shots to be able to hit winners against the guys that are good from the baseline. So I think the next step is going to be, I think we're seeing it already with the younger generation. This Zverev, Kyrgios have very good serve, but have very big shots from the baseline. So I think that's the next step. You're going to see players hitting bigger shots from the back of the court and trying to get to the net a little bit more to finish the point faster because otherwise it's very difficult to beat guys like Nadal, Murray, Djokovic if you only play from the back of the court. Now you need to try and find ways to beat that type of game, which is with hitting more winners from the back of the court. So the risk will be higher, but the more you practice it, hopefully the risk will come smaller. So I would say bigger shots from the baseline and players trying to get to the net a little bit more.
How do you work tactic-wise as a coach? How long do you prepare a single match? Do you watch the matches?
I watch too many matches. I watch a lot of matches, especially when I'm at tournaments and when we're in training weeks. My main goal as a coach is to try and develop Grigor's game against his main competitors. So I watch a lot of the top 10, top 15 to try and see how with Grigor's game I can create strengths in his game so tactically he can beat the top guys. So I would say that's a big part of my job, and I've been trying in the last months to get Grigor to watch a lot more tennis as well. I think it's very important for a top player to watch tennis. Actually, that's another advice for you. Very important to watch sports, not only tennis but sports in general, because you can learn a lot of things from watching top athletes, the way they behave on the court. Not everyone, but most of them. The way they behave and the way the game is played tactically. I think the tactical part of the game is extremely important from a young age to become to improve your IQ when it comes to the tactical side of the game. So for me, it's a big part of my job, the preparing Grigor tactically when he plays against the top-ranked guys.
Hey Danny, my name is Martin. I just wanted to ask you, audience at each tennis match is probably very important. Do you have any tricks to win it and how it influences the game of Grigor, and what do you do to win them on your side?
I think the best way to win the audience is by your effort on the court. I think when people decide to pay a ticket to come watch a sporting event, the first thing you want to see is that, I think that's the most important, is the player giving 100% on the day. After you do that, then your behavior on the court is extremely important, and then entertaining them. You can entertain them either with your tennis or with your personality. From my side, I like to entertain with the tennis and keep a quiet mind on the court and not give too much emotion. I think this is, especially in the longer matches, is very important to save energy against the top guys. So I would rather entertain the crowd with Grigor playing good tennis than with him showing emotions. I think sometimes it's good to do it and engage with the crowd to show positive emotion. I'm not a fan of negative emotion. I think he has not only a short-term impact but a long-term impact during the match when you show negative emotion. So I would say first with the effort. I would say then with having good charisma on the court. I think the crowd appreciates this, and not only doing this sometimes during the year, but the more you do it, then the people understand and have a perception of you as a player, and then they're willing to pay the ticket to go watch you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Ivo, and the coach. Grigor said that he replayed the semi-final match after the match in his mind like 20 times. How did you feel after the match?
To be honest, I was, I wouldn't say upset, but I think every time you lose a big match like that, I was more upset for him than for myself. I think I was very proud of how he played the match from beginning to end. I thought it was the best match I've seen him play since we started working. Not only tactically, but more mentally, how he was from beginning to end. So I was more upset that he lost after putting all that effort. I was more upset for him. But tennis has a funny way of developing a player's career. And in my opinion, you have to go through these matches to achieve bigger things. I think the guys at the top, they have gone through these matches many times in the past. And it's very difficult for a player to have to lose this match because, in my opinion, he was the better player on the court from beginning to end. So, in my opinion, he should have won the match because he was better, but in sports, not always the best player wins. At the end of the day, you have to win the last point, and it didn't happen on that day. But I was not that upset myself because for me it was very encouraging to see it for the future, and it was very encouraging for me to see that Grigor is able to do it. And now I know that he knows it as well, because it's important to go through a match like that for him to believe it inside of him. So for me, it was not, I would say, a negative result. For me, it was an extremely positive result. I don't want him to be content or happy with the result, because that's the worst thing that can happen to an athlete, is to be content with a result. I think it's important to always look forward to the next step. But in general, to keep improving, I thought it was a very positive match for him.
Hello, Danny. My name is Michael. Would you please share with us how you coach keeping motivation, keeping and maintaining motivation for a long time, and not only for one match, but you know?
I would say that's the most challenging part about my job, because tennis is a sport that, as you know, it's the whole year. You don't have breaks like in other sports. You play for a couple weeks and then you have a few weeks off. The player needs to be at the top of the game. You need to be motivated the whole year, and that's not only the player's job, but it's his team's job as well, to keep him on a positive state of mind and always having something for him to look forward to. So a big part of my job is always giving Grigor short-term goals, which are very important, because sometimes you can get lost on the long-term goals, thinking, okay, what do I want to finish the year at? Which tournaments do I want to win? But if you focus on this too much, you forget about the week-to-week small goals that are the ones that keep you motivated. So what I do usually is, for example, now he has a few tournaments coming up. I will give him some small goals for every week, and then I will also give him some small goals for the next 2-3 months, and then we have the bigger goals for the year. So I think it's very important. Goal setting in life, not only in tennis, is very important to always have, and I'll go back to what I said before, not to be content. To always think, I can do better, I can improve this, I can improve that. I think it's the best way to push yourself up on a daily basis.
Coming from the corporate world, and you already touched the goal setting, which is quite interesting topic for us. So, how long are your plans with Grigor, and when do you think you'll be able to get the most out of him? Because we all know that he has a lot of skills.
I think he's surprised me with how fast he can adapt to training and how fast he can achieve goals. I need to be a bit tougher on him when I set goals, because he's surpassed every goal that I've set for him. There is not actually, from the beginning that we started working in August, he's achieved every goal that I've set for him. So I need to be a little bit tougher on him, because I see that he can achieve them. But I would say my short-term goals are usually 2 to 4 weeks. Then my medium-term goals are 3 to 4 months, and then the long-term goals 6 to 12 months. So I would say, for him to achieve his highest potential, I would say we're still about 8 to 12 months away. We're still in the first phase of my work with him, which is developing a really strong base for his game plan. And then after that, we can work around that game plan and try to add things around it. But like I said, he's surprised me already a few times, so it might be shorter than that. But he's been excellent to work with, to be honest. He's done everything that he's asked to do, and not only he does it with a good attitude, which is the most important thing. So I'm looking forward to him surprising me again.
Kirill Kalif, my name, International Coach Federation. We see
Grigor very self-confident. What is the most important in this issue from the mental point of view, even if he loses a point?
I think we've been working on this a lot. I think it's extremely important for him. I think he's a totally different player when he has a positive mindset during the match. It's very difficult to do as a tennis player, but he's putting a lot of effort because he understands that it benefits him a lot. So I would say that it's something that we're working on and we talk about it constantly. For a player, it takes a lot of emotional and mental energy to always be positive. You would think that being positive shouldn't take energy, but it actually takes a lot of energy because you're most of the time as an athlete, your natural reaction when things are not going well is to be upset. So actually being conscious to try and be positive, it tires you a lot. So I would say that it hasn't been easy for him. It's not easy for any athlete, but he's putting in a big effort to try and go in that direction.
Hi, I'm Eva. I'm a tennis coach too. As we know, we can develop every part of the training process, like technical, tactical, etc. But I was wondering, what is the thing we cannot reflect on? Like some personal skills, I don't know.
I would say, especially at the top of the game, I would say the timing of information is the most important. I've not only realized that in my job, but in life. When you say a message to another person or to a player, it's invaluable. I think you can say something right now, or you can say something in a week, and it might have the completely different effect on the person or on the athlete. So I think for my job, the timing of the information and how I deliver the information to him is the most important by far. If I'm trying to use an example after a match, for example, the match finishes and there might be a piece of information that I would choose to say to him the next morning and not say to him after the match, but there might be something that I have to say to him as soon as he walks out of the court. So it's about understanding. I think experience gives you this, and luckily I've been with a few top players to have the experience when to say the information. For me, it's very important to choose the right moment so the message gets delivered in the right mindset for him. That's very important for me.
Hi, my name is Monica, and I want to ask something. We all know that Grigor has a professional life, but also has a personal life. What you can do in order to limit the personal emotion on his game?
I think that's it's something that we all have. So it's something that is not only athletes have a personal life and a professional life, and at the end of the day, the athlete is the one that makes the decisions. It's not his team's job to guide him through it. His team's job is to tell him, these are our priorities. This is what we need to do for you to become a top player or the best you can be. And then it's for the player to decide, okay, these are my priorities. This is where my professional life is. This is where my personal life is. It's not for us to tell him, you do this, you do that. We just give him the best advice we can from the professional side, and then he decides himself what he does with it. Luckily, with him, since I've been working with him since August, he's been excellent. He's done everything I asked him to do, so I have no complaints about it. He's done everything he can to make the best out of his tennis. So I haven't had to step in and say, look, you're not doing something right. So from that side, he's been really, really good since we started working. Yeah.
So it's a personal decision. Showing to them what will be the impact in his game if he doesn't do his best.
Exactly. So I will tell him, look, this is our schedule, and this is what we need to do for your tennis. And then he decides himself, this is what I do, this is what I don't do, but I have zero complaints about it.
Thank you very much.
Turning it back to, taking it back to Australian Open, if Grigor was to play the final, how would you play Federer? Tactically and mentally.
I think Grigor would have been in a good place to play the final because physically, even though he played a really long match on the Friday night and finished the match very late, the next morning he was pain-free, not tired. So for me that was a very encouraging sign because obviously that he lost, I was a bit concerned, but I was most concerned how he was going to feel the next day because I'm preparing him to win a Grand Slam. I'm not preparing him to make the semifinals of a Grand Slam. So my concern was if he had won on Friday, how was he going to feel physically to play on Sunday? And what was very encouraging for me and for him and for the whole team was that he was feeling very good, which was nice to see. So I think on Sunday he would have been feeling even better. I think physically he would have been better than Roger for the final, so that would have given him a big edge because in the final Roger and Rafa started very slow. I think that came from the fatigue from the last matches. So I think Grigor would have had the edge at the beginning of the match. Then nerves, playing the first Grand Slam final would have come into it and the experience from Roger. But I wouldn't have changed much in Grigor's game to play Roger, to be honest. He's playing his game, which is the most important thing for him, and which is dominating with his serve and trying to keep the baseline as much as he can, moving the other guy a lot. I wouldn't have changed much. I think the beginning of the match would have been extremely important for him, like I said, because I think physically he was in a better condition than Roger was to play the final. I think we even saw towards the middle and the end of the match, Roger was struggling a little bit. So I was also actually a bit upset because I think Grigor had a big chance to win the final.
We all.
But again, I think it was a very positive learning experience for everyone, not only for him but for the team. And I think tactically and physically he was ready to play the match. Then there's always the factor of playing your first Slam final, which it's not something easy to go through. But like I said, he's always surprised me, so I actually think he would have been very good on the Sunday.
Would you actually tell him the first game is the most important, or the first?
I would have told him that the first hour of the match is key. Yeah. To give everything he had on the first hour of the match.
You would have made him know that.
I would have asked him to give me everything he had on the first hour and then see what happens after that. Because I think if he would have been able to be ahead at the beginning of the match, it would have been a big advantage for him during that day. Also because if you're able to get your nerves out early in the final, I think you stand a good chance to win it.
Okay. Имаме ли още въпрос? Не. Добре. Окей. Тогава много ви благодаря на вас. Very warm thank you on behalf of all of us for sharing this valuable 1 hour with us.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Very happy to be here. Thank you.